Well, this will be the third FTF forum that I've attended. And I've been very pleased by these forums because they bring together people with quite varied backgrounds and talking about very complicated issues. And for me, it's an opportunity to hear how different people with different kinds of training approach a particular kind of a question. It's the cross-fertilization or cross-specialization which is really helpful. I mean, let me just illustrate this. You have academics. You have people in the business world. You have people who I would say are thought leaders. And the mind-opening aspect of the debate is something I think the FTF is unique. And the focus around innovation is also a challenge because basically from the start, you're trying to ask the question, how do you think about things differently? How will things play out differently in the future? And this is a really difficult but also a very challenging experience. I think it's extremely difficult, and it's difficult for two reasons. The first question is, when will we hit the bottom? And then second, if we hit the bottom, how long will it take before you start rebounding? And let me illustrate why it's difficult to predict when you hit bottom. We don't know whether the problem is purely a financial problem or it is also an issue of what is happening in the real world, the real economy, in terms of growth and production. In terms of the financial problem, there are risks and uncertainties out there which we're still discovering. And until everything becomes clear and known, you won't hit bottom because of what I would call the financial uncertainty. But after you hit the bottom in terms of the financial uncertainty being clear, then the question is, how will this affect investment, growth, employment? How long will it take to play that one out? If I go back and look at the example in terms of the Asian financial crisis, it took about a year before people fully understood the dimensions of the problem, and then it took maybe 2 years for the problem to play out in terms of impact upon output. But in this particular case, it's more complicated. So there is the potential actually for this to go on for several years. But there's also the issue which I think is quite interesting. The speed by which knowledge is disseminated and the speed by which financial markets and systems adjust is becoming much quicker than the past. So you could also have a very surprising thing. It could be a very surprising thing that things actually rebound much faster. So you have two extremes, something which could be many years and something which could actually be over in a couple of months. Well, let me try to illustrate this at three levels. For countries, particularly those countries which are dependent upon globalization as on their path to success, take China, for example, what they already realize is that the trade volumes globally will shrink. So the question is, how do they remain competitive in a shrinking global market for trade? And the only way they can do this, because demand is contracting, is by more varied and innovative product lines. So the pressure in terms of competition is increasing. And the survivors will be those who basically are able to tap innovative methods. Now let's go back to corporations, particularly financial corporations and financial markets. There has been a lot of innovation in terms of financial products over the last several years. But what's happened is it turns out that many of these products didn't add value, and they generate a lot of risks. So a real challenge going forward in the next year or two is the production of what I would call different kinds of financial products which truly add value, but which don't stretch what I would call the risk-taking to the point where it jeopardizes the world economy. So you have countries, you have corporations and financial markets having to innovate. And lastly, let me point out there needs to be a major innovation in terms of how countries work with each other and how international institutions work with each other. Because globalization has also illustrated the fact that no country, no firm, no market is immune or isolated from other markets globally. We don't have arrangements which basically allow the kind of coordination and risk sharing that's needed to deal with this kind of a crisis. So I think there is a new kind of innovation in terms of the international architecture, which in fact we're just beginning to deal with.